Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. So as I talked about in the quarterly update, I've had this box joint jig sitting over here for a little while now, and so I'm going to go ahead and get it unboxed and give it a little review. I don't really know how long this particular box joint jig has been out there or anything like that. I just know that I didn't want another table saw sled to go over there, so I decided to try this one at the router table and figured I'd take you along for the ride. So let me get it unboxed and see what we got, and we'll go from there. Okay, so out of the box, putting the jig together is really simple. The instructions that come with it are actually very good. Color, which is nice, and pictures, which is nice, as well as descriptions. Overall, I was pretty impressed with the manual that came with it. All you really need is a Phillips screwdriver to install this plate, as well as install the pin, and they're both set up on a Phillips screwdriver. You do need a set of setup blocks when you get over to the router table to set it up. In my case, I was using 3/8, but you could just as easily probably make you a couple of samples. This one would need 3. You need one for 1/4, one for 3/8, and one for the 1/2 inch. So you could do that rather than having setup blocks like I have. But I have a set of setup blocks in here, so that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so the setup is fairly simple. I have a 3/8 setup block, and I have my upcut spiral bit twisted so that the cutting corner is closest to my pin. And I literally just set that in there and just make sure it's just barely kissing. And that's all it takes. Now, if I needed to make an adjustment, then I would loosen these to make that adjustment. A big adjustment, I would loosen both of them and get me in close. A small, slight adjustment, I would probably just lean one and back my fence off and just tap it over just a little bit for minute adjustments. But there is no micro adjust on this. It is literally setting up and running some test pieces to make sure you're getting what you need. Now, I should also note here, if you're not comfortable getting your fingers in here this close to a spinning bit, and there's nothing wrong with that, they did give you enough wing space on each side to use a small clamp and clamp your material. Not a bad idea, especially with smaller pieces. Additionally, in the back here, they gave you blocks for the other 2 pins that go in here, the 1/2 inch and the 1/4 inch. I'm going to leave those out because I don't want them in my way while I'm trying to run this close to a spinning router bit. Okay, so overall initial impressions, it did a nice job on this end, but you notice that there's a little bit of slop in these tracks, not a lot, but I think that was enough to cause, I don't know if you can see these or not, but there's just a couple of small gaps down on this end. They're not bad, they're certainly fixable. But needless to say, I did have just a couple of small gaps, and I think that that's caused by this little bit of play that's in the jig itself. I don't know if you can hear that. The other thing, if you have a top mount adjust, there's no hole in here to get your tool into. Now mine is a side crank, so it's not a real big deal. Dust collection is mediocre. Now, I think I could have done some things to improve that. I think I could have removed my zero clearance insert, which would have given me better suction down through the table. And I also think I could have opened my fence up just a little bit, and maybe I wouldn't have had this stuff sitting on top of my table. All in all, for the cost of the jig, it functions and makes serviceable box joints. In my case, I was using a 3/8, so the thickness of your material, or the width of your material rather, should be in increments of 3/8 to give you a nice joint on each side, so you get a nice pen on each side. All right, so my final impressions on the Rockler Box Joint Jig. Overall, for $70, I thought it was fairly decent. It only took me about 10 minutes to set up, and I was able to make these box joints within that 10 minutes. I thought the instruction manual was very good. The color, the pictures, the descriptions I thought were all really good. Now, that being said, I did go have a look at YouTube to see, and lo and behold, there's just a ton of reviews out there on this particular box joint jig. So my apologies for adding another one to the mix. And this is, purely my opinion on this particular jig. I did pay for this with my own money. The biggest complaint that concerned me was that these slides did not fit some of the router tables that are out there. One of them even going so far as to name the Jessam specifically, but I'll say I didn't have any issues on my Jessam table. So take that for what it's worth. Another one of the complaints was that it only comes with the 1 zero clearance fence because they want you to buy the other 2 zero clearance fences. Well, this is just a 3 1/8 by 6 inch, I believe it is, piece of MDF, 1/2 inch MDF. And being woodworkers, I'm pretty sure we could all make those. So I didn't see that as being a big deal. The whole thing is an MDF construction, and I've had a couple of issues with their jigs in the past being from the MDF stuff. My tapering jig, for instance, I had to remake some parts to that. But quite frankly, as woodworkers, there's just not a whole lot difficult or intricate about making this new base if you had to. And I don't see why I couldn't do that if I needed to, especially if I have all the parts. Now, from my own personal experience at the router table, this slop, that concerned me a little bit, and it probably explains why I have a couple of the gaps that I have. But I also think maybe just a little piece of blue tape on one of these runners would take that slop out, and I'll have to toy with that to see if I can do a little better with the slop. But overall, for a $70 price point, I thought it did a fairly decent job. Now, they do make an XL version, which is it's $120, but I actually think I like that version quite a bit better. It has a taller fence. It has a little different slide mechanism that has a clamp on the front and keeps your hand behind it and your fingers further away from the spinning router bit, which I think is a good thing. But is it worth, almost double the money? Well, only you can answer that. I hope to get some use out of it. I think it'll be great with my small box sled that I made for the table saw, and we'll get some small projects out of it. But we'll see how it works into the flow. Until then, it'll probably just drop in the bottom drawer of the new router enclosure and hopefully come out as often as possible. So that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. I hope you got something out of it, and until next time, take care.